Opinions, viewpoints, and beliefs presented on this program do not necessarily reflect those of the management, the affiliates and broadcast partners, or the sponsors. Listener discretion is advised.
Scarefest Radio, the radio you can see.
And hello and welcome everyone, and welcome to Scarefest Television. The original broadcast date, December 2nd, 2022. And yes, the council episode went kind of sideways. But bring it me and Claire. Bring us up together. Everyone, you're looking. I don't have us programmed in.
Oh, there we go.
There we go. I was going to say,
Way
we sat here and
there.
you watched me do all that. Anyway, Claire Heaney, of course, is my co-host for the evening, the lovely and talented Claire Heaney. And I just want to say, we are like the last two people alive at the Scarefest. We are the 300. We're the last two guys in that ditch from that movie that are killing Persians. Everybody else is down. People down. They have the flu. At least I assume it's a flu because they were sick enough not to even want to text me or talk to me. We saw a picture of Brandon today. I thought he was in a hospital bed at first, but no, he's on his couch with a CPAP on his face. So it's that bad, people. But Claire looks bright and healthy, and welcome back to the show. And Charles Romans, let's go ahead and show everybody. He hosts a podcast called Shadows of Legend, and this year he presented at Scarefest. And I know Charles from the smoking area at Scarefest. That is 90% of our contact over the years. That and and sitting in front of the Hyatt Regency. So now the background noise, I'll let Charles tell you the history behind why you're getting some background noise, people. Basically, he's not at his studio. He's not at home. He had to do it somewhere else. He can tell you all about that. But
okay, the studio was booked previously, and my home is under renovation. At second thought, I probably should have had it there because it looks right now like a crumbling old mausoleum, which would fit right in with what we're talking about.
See, you suggested I had green screen, and so you could have just done it there and had like authentic.
There you go. But the good people here at Learn to Play Games in Flatwoods, Kentucky, have been nice enough to let me use their space, so we can just roll with it.
Trust me, when Brandon's on and he lives across the street from a hospital, no, you're fine. You are fine. Unless a siren happens, a fire engine happens to go through your parking lot. Okay, so anyway, you presented this year, Entering the Shadows of Legend. He was a speaker at Scarefest. Now, this was basically, the way you describe it, I didn't get to see the presentation, but you were just kind of it was kind of a best of your podcast storytelling. Is that how you presented it, or?
Exactly, and I highlighted a lot of people who shared their stories, and you see some differences, but a lot of similarities. And when people call me, I let them tell their story. I don't judge. It's not like I'm trying to disprove what they say or prove what they say. I want them to share the story. I may ask a pertinent question or two for clarification, but the whole bottom line is let them give you the information. Mm-hmm. And then you make up your mind whether or not it's credible. Because I do it just like I do when I report a news story. I gather the information and present it to the reader, or in this case, the listener.
And I want to point out,
I've had pretty good luck out of it. So.
I want to point out, everybody, you need to go to his website. Just Google him and go to his website, because the little intro podcast that he has posted on the front page of his website poetry, absolute poetry. Do you actually sit down every episode and record and specially record the intro for that episode? Because I fly by the seat of my damn pants. And
well, it's more like in blocks. There's a different intro if a person's talking about extraterrestrials than if they're talking about a cryptid. And then, of course, ghosts, that's their own separate animal. And it kind of points out a really good thing that most people get wrong about the paranormal. Paranormal is a really big umbrella that covers a lot of different things. You have the scientific aspect of it, you have the strange aspect of it, and then you have the supernatural aspect of it. And people who don't believe in a lot of these things have a tendency to just say, well, that's just not real, and they dismiss it. But they dismiss it without getting any real information. And I think it's best to gather all the information you can, including eyewitness testimony, before you start to even make a decision.
One little follow-up to your introduction there. Now, you don't no names. I do not trash people on this show. But have you ever talked? Have you ever had a guest on, and I'm sure you treated them with respect and that they were you and everything. But after you hung up the phone or however you do the show, have you ever just sat there and went, my God, that person is batshit crazy?
No, actually, no, because you have to look at it this way. If you tell me, and we'll give an extreme example, if you tell me that Bigfoot and the creature from the Black Lagoon were sitting on your back porch yesterday playing pinochle, to start with, I don't know. I wasn't there. And evidence is a little suspect because people think, oh, well, that video is doctored or the audio has been doctored. Or like you said, well, that person's just crazy. But since I wasn't there, all I can do is listen to a person as they tell their story. And I encourage the listeners to do that as well. And that way you decide, is that person personally credible? Do I think they believe what they're telling me? Now, as I said, I wasn't there.
Right.
It may be outlandish, but again, it's about the person themselves and whether or not they believe.
Okay, I'm going to have to go back through my old Paranormal Filler archives, my old podcast, and find you the psychic from Australia that I interviewed. That was my only one. I've interviewed people that I disagreed with. Now, I will say I have to be even more careful now because back in the old days when I did an actual podcast, you couldn't hear my eyes roll back in my head when somebody told me something. And so I had to be a little more careful now. But yeah, that, okay. That's all fair enough. Claire, over to you.
Yeah. I don't know. So have you ever had any like bullshit artists, like people that just, you knew that maybe they were elaborating a little bit too much?
I have had a couple that I thought maybe might have been trying too hard to convince me. And that's not necessarily dishonesty. What it is, when you're interacting with someone, whether it's in person or over the phone or whatever, you're expecting a certain response from what you say. And if you're not getting the response you expect, or if you're getting a response that's definitely what you don't want, then you would have a tendency to elaborate into a gray zone that isn't actually giving people facts. I ran into this a lot when I was a reporter for 10 years. And people do go off the rails simply because they want to stress things. But more often than not, it's not so much, like I said, that they're being dishonest. They just get excited.
It's an exciting topic. So,
well, it's the whole thing. Everyone's afraid of dead air, whether it's in a conversation or on the radio or whatever. So if you're processing it, it takes you a little bit to respond, then they may just get excited and elaborate too much.
Back to Wes.
Oh, okay. That was quick. I can't get I'm thrown because I can't get my other host to shut up, except for Chad. Chad is beautiful. He sits there and watches the clock and everything. Okay. let's just do the typical one here. I actually was afraid to ask it because everyone wants to ask this. Getting started in podcasting. Now, I understand. I'm going to assume that you were a writer first.
Yes.
Okay. What brought you in? What made you want to share into the podcast field?
Well, part of it is the immediate interaction. When I first began as a reporter, that obviously had nothing to do with paranormal, I started to realize that if I didn't just fire questions at people, if I got them involved in a conversation, they would actually give me more information than I asked for, and probably give me information that I didn't think to ask for. So from that, learning that, I thought, well, interacting and sharing paranormal stories, it would be best to do it through a podcast, because even though people are present and they're speaking, you're not seeing them on the screen. And a lot of people, well, for instance, when I interviewed the ladies from Capers, a paranormal investigation group, they said the first thing people say when they call us is, "We don't think we're crazy," but we see it when people have that hesitance if there's a little bit of insulation. So when you listen to the podcast, you're just hearing their voice. They could be anyone. So they're still maintaining a little bit of anonymity, but they're also sharing their stories and maybe getting things off their chest bothering
them. Okay, let's see. What? We'll go to commercial break after this. What you cover? I know ghost stories, cryptozoology. I'm sure you got some legends and myths. I hate that word. And you probably some ufology mixed in there. What genre do you find make for the most, I'd say, interesting guests, but yeah, easiest interviews?
Well, honestly, the easiest interview is a paranormal experience that has a supernatural component, such as a ghost, or in the case of demons, or some people have reported seeing angels. It seems that people open up more and more, are more willing to talk. I've interviewed people about cryptids, for instance, and they're telling you this, but you know they're holding back something, because they're always, I get the impression they're always expecting that I'm going to come out and say, "Well, no, that's stupid. You didn't see that," which I would never do that. But people seem to loosen up more when they're talking about ghosts.
Do you find, though, when you're talking about paranormal teams, now when somebody calls in and says, "I saw my grandmother in the attic," hey, that's cool. I'll listen to the whole story.
Yeah.
But when you talk to people that pretend to be authorities, if not experts in the paranormal field, do you find you catch them making statements of fact that you know are not, that are just hypothesis, or just, personal beliefs?
We see that's the trap a lot of people fall into. Once you perceive yourself or are perceived as an expert, then you think, at least, that people want hard answers. Hard answers aren't always there. I did the podcast with Doug Waller. I'll go ahead and say it, he's an expert in Bigfoot research. And I had asked him a question. I said, "Well, since you are an expert in the field," and he laughed. He said, "There are no experts in this field." He said, "You have people that have a lot of credentials, but there are no experts." So it's kind of one of those things, when someone presents themselves as though they know everything there is to be known, it's usually an indication that they know less.
I will agree with that. I will agree with that. I know that's what got me into ghost hunting. I was an armchair quarterback, and I was listening to them say things on TV like, "Well, we know ghosts are energy." No, we don't. We don't know that at all.
No, yeah, right. Yeah. A ghost could be made of anything.
Right.
Honestly.
Now my hypothesis.
What they're doing, they're extrapolating. And I have my own theories on the possibilities of what ghosts are. I think that I have some evidence to support that, but that doesn't necessarily mean that I have, a monopoly on the truth. I believe it, but that doesn't mean everybody else
Right.
has.
Maybe I overdo it, but I'm very careful. I always say I believe things, but then again, I think a lot of hosts don't like it because they want the answers, like you said, the hard answers. And I talk about everything in belief, and so I think that kind of throws some people that no, don't tell us what you believe, tell us what you know. I don't know crap. Anyway, I'm gonna do a real quick commercial break.
Exactly.
Real quick commercial break here for Blue Leaf Naturals. Blue Leaf Naturals, long-standing host of the show. Heck, they were with me on Paranormal Filler. They've had my back for years in one form or the other. Anyway, Blue Leaf Naturals CBD oils. Let's just talk about them a minute. Oops, wrong button. First of all, it's locally sourced right here in Kentucky, locally processed right here in Kentucky. They it's what they call the full spectrum. If you're worried, because some of I'll put it this way: when you see the cheap shit on the shelves, when you say, "Oh, that's a bar," that's awful cheap. It's usually not the full spectrum CBD, but it is the finest hemp flower extract they use. You can find it at blueleafnaturals.com. I believe in it. I've not had to use it for about a week now, because my Scarefest hangover finally, I'm off painkillers, is what I'm saying, people. I'm sleeping better. My knees have not given out, but this was my go-to remedy for that. So go to Blue Leaf Naturals, and that's on the top of the screen there. There's no E in it in the blue. There is in leaf. So, but blueleafnaturals.com, and for the record, the Black Friday sale is still going on. Buy one, they will ship you two. So that's like half price technically. Great stocking stuffers. If you got a friend that bitches about being in pain all the time, voila. So blueleafnaturals.com. Now, okay, actually, you know what? Let's throw it over to Claire and see how she handles it now. I'm mean. I am mean.
So, I mean, you were talking a little bit about like ghost hunting and stuff. So
Yes.
I read you had one article from like 2021 where you went to the Paramount Arts Center. Like, have you been to any other ghost hunting since then? How often do you do that?
That was the last physical one I went to, but I seem to pick up EVPs by accident. The first time I picked up anything like that was I was interviewing a group called the Greenup County Paranormal Society, and I met them the day the article I interviewed them. So of course everybody's being a little formal, and it's Mr. Romans this, Mr. Romans that. So I'm recording all this. So then when I get home, I'm playing this back to do the story for the paper, and I hear something. I stop the recording. I thought, that's not right. So I back it up, play it again, and the second time was, no, I did hear something. So I backed it up, and I asked my wife to come in there and listen to it. And so she listens to it, and she says, "Oh my God, that's your mother's voice." And my mother had been dead a year. But and one of the reasons that supports this is that I had said something a little silly, and this voice said, in clear as day, said Charlie, like my mother used to do, and she was trying to correct me. So I picked up that one. I was at a hotel at another time, and I was interviewing them actually about Christmas decorations. And we're starting the interview, and it's just me and this very nice lady. I won't mention the name of the hotel, and you'll know why in a second. So we're starting the interview, and I say, I hear this place is haunted. And very seriously, she says, "We don't talk about that." I'm like, okay, I can really make her mad about this. So I change the subject, go back to talk about Christmas trees and everything else. And when I'm listening to this recording at home, writing the article, she says, "We don't talk about this" on the recording. And this other voice from wherever says, "Yeah, it's haunted," just like that. So as far as the Paramount goes, years before, again, I'm interviewing a lady about something else. And I'm picking up all these knocking and these barely understandable voices. So apparently it's following me around. Perhaps I'm too oblivious to catch it when it's happening.
It's gotta be really creepy, like to hear the playback where you would not have picked up that on that just naturally. Like that's
Oh
yeah.
no,
I've
no.
never tried any of that before, but I've watched enough shows.
Well, and this is the thing, and this kind of touches back to talking to Wes there a moment ago. I know, I'm convinced that that was my mother's voice. I'm just not entirely certain it was her using it, which opens an entirely other can of worms. So there's so much of this area that's unknown. And the only way we can determine what is and isn't is to keep doing research and to pay attention to other people that are doing research, whether they are credible people or even someone we might think is a whack job. Okay. But I try to just take everyone as they come, and I want the listener to make up their mind.
And it's almost like with like ghost stories that you said, like it's so relatable. Like, and you can ask anyone, and someone has some sort of story to talk about. Whereas, more on like the Bigfoot and stuff. Like I'm never in the woods. I don't go hunting or anything, so that's not in my day to day.
I tell my friends who live in the city this to kind of creep them out, But I smoke, but my wife and daughter are allergic to it, so I go outside to do it. If I wake up at 2:30 in the morning, I want a cigarette. I walk out of my front porch and smoke a cigarette. Or where my house sits, there's this field that's about a mile long, and of course it's dark, and I hear something crashing out in the field, and it's probably a deer because I have seen deer run out of this field before. However, I can't see them. I can't smell them. So it could actually be anything out in the field. And when I tell my friends who live in the city, they get creeped out and they want me to shut up.
Definitely. Yeah. It's intriguing, but it's definitely creepy, in the darkness.
Well, you hear the sounds. Now, I've lived in the country most of my life. I know the sounds of normal animals. Like sometimes I walk out on the front porch and it's foggy and the coyotes are howling, which is a very haunting and disturbing sound. So, and me being the type of person I am, I either think about the old Hammer horror films, or I think about the film with Love at First Bite, where George Hamilton goes out and the wolves are howling. He says, "Children of the night, shut up." So, but I know that that's not a paranormal thing. That is actually a coyote. But now there's some nights that I hear these noises, and they're a lot like the noises that they have recorded for Bigfoot that you see on all these paranormal TV shows. And the strange thing is, I usually have my cell phone in my pocket. If I reach in my pocket to pull this out, it stops. Now, maybe I'm the whack job. I don't think so. Or maybe something's actually watching where these noises are going on. I haven't been able to capture them yet. Still trying.
All right, Wes.
I knew you were getting ready to toss me. I was pointing to the producer. First of all, Katie Followell has joined us in the chat room, and she likes my hair.
Oh, great. That's always nice.
I was actually going to apologize for my beard shaving tonight. I use clippers where I don't shave all week, and they gave out. They just quit. So I had to use a razor to shave everything, and I didn't have a good razor, and so it looks like I did it with a lawnmower, basically. But as far as the hair, it just didn't stand up tonight. I don't know. Maybe it's give out too. It's like me during the holiday season. It's just give the fuck out. Anyway.
Well, we're coming into Christmas. Everybody's rushing around. Yeah, we're all exhausted. So yeah, and it stand reason the hair would collapse too.
Now I was going to follow up with you on the noises you hear. First of all, have you ever watched one of those Bigfoot shows? Okay, now first of all, every time I've watched one and they hear something they think is Bigfoot, I go,
yes,
that's a damn bull. I've listened to bulls and cows all my life, and yes, they will absolutely make these god awful noises, and every time I think that's what it is. But I have a plan. We're getting ready probably to have a subdivision built across from my house. I want to get a goat that screams like the one on Thor: Love and Thunder. I am going to.
Yeah, that would be nice.
I'm going to find me a goat that it makes that much noise and put it right out here along the road. And, but you were talking about noises. Bobcats sound like babies crying.
Foxes are creepy. Foxes.
And deer in distress are also very, very creepy. When they scream,
Sure.
they absolutely scream. So I just wanted to share a little country boy information there with everybody. Now another follow up on this. You mentioned that you were interviewing the person and they don't mention the haunt, don't mention the ghost.
Yes.
With paranormal tourism being as big as it is, why do you think people are still like that?
Well, some of it is they still perceive a stigma. And
but if the stigma comes in denominations of 5, 10s, 20s, and 50s, I'm good with it. That's what I'm saying.
yes, if my house actually were haunted, there would be a ticket booth at the end of the driveway. Come on in, listen to the ghost scream. But no, a lot of people, it's funny because this plays into a lot of why people don't believe. People a lot of times refuse to believe because they're afraid to believe. Everybody wants their life to be nice and normal and compartmentalized. Things like Bigfoot or ghosts or the Mothman, they violate our natural sense of order. And if you just deny something, maybe a lot of times I compare it to a child whistling in the dark because they don't want to be afraid. And it doesn't really work because if there's something there, it's going to get you anyway, no matter how much you whistle. But for the moment, it makes them feel better. And I use this analogy a lot too. And I'm not going to say whether or not I believe in vampires, but everybody knows what a vampire is. So if I were to be able to convince you right now with 100% certainty that vampires were real, how well would you sleep tonight? The answer for most people is not at all. And the price of garlic would go through the roof.
With my fat naked ass up in the air, because okay, my feeling on things like that. Now, first of all,
yeah.
I believe in vampires on, I guess you could say, on the periphery. I don't dismiss it. It just doesn't really cross my mind that much. But really, it reminds me of the time we had met some people lived out of state and they wanted to come down to Kentucky and visit with us. Now, we knew them, but we didn't know them. And I'm like,
yes,
I wonder if I should hide all the guns. And then it hit me. If they want to kill me, they will bring their own gun. I'm sure they will come prepared to actually murder me. So anything that hasn't killed me yet, I just don't worry about it. Now, I will say, to play on something else you said about if you had screaming ghosts in your house, you'd sell tickets. I'm getting distracted by the background noise. No, the whole, how can I put this? Oh, I know. Okay. People go out and ghost hunt. And I've even heard people are afraid to watch certain TV shows because they're afraid it'll bring a ghost into their life.
Sure.
But they're always, one of the common questions when I host a ghost hunt is, do you think anything will follow me home? And the honest to God truth of the question is, if ghosts would easily follow you home without you doing something really, really, really what I would call stupid, 90% of the paranormal investigators I know would get them in their house so that they could sit in their sweatpants and ghost hunt. So that's
exactly. Sit there, nice drink, maybe some Cheetos or a bologna sandwich.
Yeah. Talking to this microphone. Okay. Let's go ahead and do our half-hour break. No announcements tonight, of course, people. I usually kind of go ahead and spoil that. Spirit Mechanics. Now, you've heard me talking about it. They've moved into brick and mortar. 1510 Newtown Pike, Suite 116. Their side of the store is actually facing Newtown Pike. But you can also, when you pull in the parking lot, you can see the Jeweled Phoenix. The building all connects. but they have moved into brick and mortar. They got stuff for sale. But these guys have been, they're another one, long-standing sponsors of the show, Paranormal Filler and Scarefest Radio and TV. Love these guys. I am a spirit mechanic, so I fully endorse this message. But they are a group of like-minded individuals. They're brought together by what they share in common, and they're strengthened by their differences. This whole metaphysical thing, all this ghost stuff and all this spirituality can be intimidating. You sit down with these guys, they take the intimidation out of it. Most of their sessions, despite all the advertising about their angelic work and energy work and all this, truth of the matter is they're good guys to sit down and talk to. It's like having a room full of therapists. They listen to you, they give you their advice. They might pull out a bell or something and do something. Big on stones. They're big on stones. But they're really a bunch of great guys. Go to their website, spiritmechanics.com, spiritmechanics.com. And I'll tell you, if you're a fan of Amy Allen and, what's the name of her show? Steve DeShavi and Amy Allen. That's bad. I can remember the people, not the name of the show. Anyway, they are her go-to team.
Is that the Holzer Files?
No.
Crap.
No, I'm thinking of a different.
God, that is sad that I forgot the name of the show. Producer's going to pull it up in real time. That's wrong, Amy Allen. There's a real pretty one that she just pulled up. Anyway, the thing is, Dead Files. Thank you, Kimberly Romans. Thank you very much. The Dead Files. So, but basically, if when Amy leaves a location, if she thinks that the people need help, further help than, just the communication or the ease of mind that she gives them, this is who she sends in. So just to give them a little plug, though, spiritmechanics.com. Great bunch of guys, and I fully endorse them. Now, we should do our one or two announcements.
Oh, that's right. Sorry.
'Tis the season, everybody. I got one announcement. Central Kentucky Mystical Market, Lexington's premier monthly psychic and holistic event, Newtown Pike, 1950 Newtown Pike, Lexington, Clarion Hotel. Stop by next weekend. Next weekend is when that's going on. That is the 10th and 11th if you're playing the home version. But and I will be there next weekend because Anita made me commit to going despite me not even wanting to leave the house right now. But I'll be there. We'll have a little bit of Scarefest merchandise. We've had a little bit left over from the booth. So if you are wanting to get a t-shirt, we've got like 3 sizes tops. But we do have some Scarefest merchandise from this year. I need to get some ghost stories out of you, dude. So I keep talking about other things.
As you were talking about that, I was thinking about the episode where I speak with Sandra Mosses, and she's been on several of the paranormal shows. She's a psychic medium, and she was telling a story about they came into a house looking for a specific entity that was causing trouble, and a young child who wasn't even really speaking was telling them where this being was hiding. So you should check out that episode. She goes into depth on how you should go about, I guess, for lack of a better, putting ghost hunting too as well, because we were talking about. She refers to everything as. I'm old school. I would say angels and devils. She says positive energy and negative energy beings. So we had got into this discussion. If you get a being that theoretically is thousands of years old, how could you expect to stand up to this? And she said, well, you can't. That's why you never go in by yourself. And be prepared, because 2 or 3 together can help and resist any kind of overpowering by this negative energy. But she's also saying that you don't want to I guess confront these things directly, because in more cases than not, you make them stronger and you make them mad. So you need to actually consult your local paranormal group, some people that know a few things about it, and bring them in to help you out and do this.
Now, this will be an opinion question.
And then
on what you just mentioned,
okay.
I want your opinion. How does the average person know who to ask help for? Because, and the reason I ask is, now, of course, I got my start here ghost hunting at the Ross Opera House, and I brag about it to a certain degree in that I believe that the ghosts kind of held my hand through the entire process. They taught me to ghost hunt, to how to do it. But when I was doing research on the building, I found this team. I will not name them, but basically they had these EVPs that they had collected at the Ross Opera House Theater in Cynthiana, Kentucky, to give them a plug.
Yes.
And they said the ghosts were fighting. Now, I had been there enough times by then to know that their bar across the street shuts down at about, what was it, 1 a.m.
Yes.
to 2 a.m.
Yeah, 1, 2.
And I could tell, if nothing else, I could tell by the reverberation of the noise. This was not in the building. This was someone outside screaming at her husband to get his ass home rather than hang out at the bar all night.
Right.
And it even the words matched my little vision that I had. But somebody that did not know that, I guarantee you these people, if they had a website, it said expert somewhere on it. So in your opinion, what should a person look for if they do want to go ghost hunting? Who should they try to tag along with?
Well, what I would think, what I would recommend is look for the groups that have information. I mean, not necessarily cool, spooky EVPs or anything like that, but people that will offer you information and back that information up. Not everything moans in the night is a ghost. Sometimes it is just the wind. That being said, sometimes it is a ghost. And if you're going to confront this or you want it gone, then you need to talk to people who have done this before. And people usually document their cases. Like you said, you remember your first time doing this, and you could probably list something as a list as long as your arm of the places that you've been in and invested.
If I write big, but
So
go ahead.
those are the type of people you look for. No, it's not necessarily the people with the flashiest websites that know what they're doing. And if you want to carry this, going back to the positive, negative, anybody can set a Ouija board down on the table and start doing weird stuff. If you don't know what you're doing, you better hope nothing answers, because things like that open a door that isn't easily shut. So when you consult somebody to help you, then you want them to know how to both speak to any spirits that might be there, and also, I hate to use the word exercise, but at least to block these spirits. Right. Because not every spirit's friendly. I mean, they're not all violent. Sometimes it's just those voices like, yeah, it's haunted. But
you can't go to the Walmart parking lot and count on everybody being swell. So, you know.
Oh, exactly. But I was laughing during you saying that, because I had, talking about the bar shutting down, I used to live in South Shore, Kentucky. And now the house was a little creepy, various things, but I kept hearing voices and I never could catch it. And we moved in the wintertime. Well, it's spring, come around eventually. And of course, you open the windows, you want to get some fresh air in the house. So I'm sitting there in my back room, I'm typing on the computer, and I hear this haunting, disembodied voice come through the window saying, "You're clear on pump 3." And I had lived next to this gas station, so I'm hearing this. I'm hearing people authorizing the pump. But I swear to God, it sounded creepy. It sounded like something from the great beyond. So don't jump to conclusions and check things out before you believe it.
I'll follow that up with, I think it was season 1 or 2. I think it had to be season 2. Ghost Hunters, the TV, TAPS, came to Waverly Hills.
Yes.
And their first investigation, they got caught something really creepy on thermal. And it was down the hallway, and they just could not figure it out. And I watched it. And this is back before I knew my ass from a hole in the ground when it came to ghost hunting. But I said, those are raccoons, dude.
Yeah.
those are raccoons. And sure enough, I asked the owner about it, and she, this place is full of raccoons. We tell people, if you hear something scratching the walls, that's not a ghost. That is, that it's a raccoon that's gotten down in the drywall here behind the wall. And so anyway, give it over to Claire now.
Yeah, I'm just thinking, have you ever worked or have you ever interviewed anyone who's ever done like hypnosis or anything like that?
Not specifically hypnosis, but I have talked to people who have consulted psychics rather and did readings. Hypnosis is one of those things. It's a very good tool to help people improve their mental frame of mind. In fact, my wife's grandmother quit smoking through hypnosis. But as far as to do the hypnosis and the retrotherapy and remembering past lives, I've not interviewed someone that's done that. I'm not discounting it whatsoever, because there exists a possibility that we've been here in this space 10, 15, 20 times. So I would love to interview somebody who and have somebody on the podcast that has this experience. Sorry to disappoint you, but not yet.
Not yet. Don't disrule it yet.
I could lie about it, but that's kind of really not my thing.
We're gonna put it on your agenda now. Yeah.
Oh, we'll have a look.
Well, nice.
Well, let's go ahead and let's do our final commercial break. This will be a long break, everybody. Joe Lewis likes a movie. He actually gave one a positive review tonight. You will be so impressed that he did. But anyway, go to commercial break.
Horror. Movie. Fans. For. Life. On Facebook. Find us. For watch parties. For news. For memes. For friends. For life. Horror movie fans for life. Join us.
Hey, Scarefest fans, this is Joe Lewis. I can't say my name of Bonehead Weekly with another review. And this week, it's something I liked quite a bit. In fact, I couldn't barely stop watching it, and it made me jump a few times, and I may just be turning into a pansy. Because normally, horror films that make $100 million at the box office or huge hits aren't necessarily something I like. But in this case, even though I thought it looked kind of lame, I mean, this Smile thing is pretty creepy, I liked Smile, and I liked it a lot. I mean, it was fun. It was a lot of fun. And the ending, whoa, they stick to the ending. So basically, I knew nothing about this movie. It came out of nowhere for me. Apparently, this guy, Parker Finn, who wrote and directed, he's directed a couple of short films, and he's been trying to get the screenplay sold for years, and this guy just killed it. And here's the plot. I'm going to read it straight from IMDb. After witnessing a bizarre, traumatic incident involving a patient, Dr. Rose Carter starts experiencing frightening occurrences that she can't explain. Rose must confront her troubling past in order to survive and escape her horrifying new reality. Of course, this is true. And Rose is played by Sosie Bacon. And yeah, it's Kevin Bacon's daughter. Really. There's a couple other people in the movie, but other than Cal Penn, Jesse T. Usher, I didn't really know any of them. And I just liked it. She does a really good job. And you see you've seen the ads. It was all over TV and baseball with the lady. Her name is Caitlin Stacy, who does the smile. And she was in the baseball game, sitting behind the umpire, whatnot, and during the playoffs. It works. So basically, this doctor, her patient shows up and says she's psycho and that something's out to kill her. And then right before she commits suicide in front of the doctor, she does the smile, and then you don't want to know the rest. And then Eventually, Susie sees it and then starts witnessing these things. A lot of it I've seen in a lot of other movies, whether that be The Ring or Insidious. I've seen them in other movies, but it comes together in kind of a weird amalgamation, and you start to learn more. She starts going through the person before, the person before, and the person before. So in a way, it's like The Ring. You watch the video, you've got 7 days, and you're going to die, and you start seeing things before you go crazy. There's not really a time limit, but there's a demon, and I don't want to give away too much, but I want you to know that it's a very enjoyable movie. And in my basement, I jumped 2 or 3 times. It really made me jump 2 or 3 times, so I enjoyed it. It's a lot of fun. It's a good popcorn horror film. There's just a little bit of blood, not too crazy. And the ending, I give them props because this does not turn out well for everybody. Not giving anything away, but let's just say they stick to it. You know how there's kind of a reprieve? I just don't want to talk about it too much. Smile, man. I enjoyed it quite a bit. And when I started seeing the tick on the box office, I was like, this is going to be one of those. Finally, it's on Paramount Plus. So if you have Paramount Plus, it's included in your package. Check it out. That's where I watched it, in my basement. Smile, man. You keep on smiling. I can't do it. I don't have that kind of smile that's creepy. What do you mean I have a smile that's creepy? You guys are just mean. This has been Joe Lewis of Bonehead Weekly, and you go out and you see Smile on Paramount Plus.
And welcome back to the final segment of Scarefest TV. Katie, does my hair look much better than Joe's did tonight? He didn't even comb his. Anyway, let's finish out the show doing what I originally planned to do at 90% of the show. What is one of the best ghost stories that you... Tell us what you told the people at Scarefest this year. What were some of the stories you shared?
Well, I covered a lot of different things, but one of the things actually that I think might be kind of what you're looking for, and it has a personal element for me, a little divorced from the main story, but typically ghost stories, especially in a rural area, they involve some sort of tragedy where an entire family dies or there's a fire or things of that nature. Well, close to where I grew up, there was this 2-story house that burned down, and unfortunately a small girl died in the fire. And people would report seeing this girl walking through this field. I'm running my fingers across this desk and nobody can see that, but they would see her at certain times of the night, certain times of the year, walking down this field. And the personal element is this: the house we were renting at the time had not bad plumbing, but it had a tendency to freeze in the wintertime. Fortunately, there was also a well. So if the water would freeze and I had to go out and get water, I'd be drawing water from this well, looking across this field where everyone had seen this ghost girl. And I'm expecting, especially in the middle of the night, I've seen a lot of things there, but I never saw the ghost girl. However, there's been a couple of people who I would say was credible witnesses that would never make anything up like that. They swear they've seen this girl. She comes to them when they're out at certain times of the year at night, and even in some reports, it involves, if you read a certain verse out of the Bible, this lady will appear, this child will appear. So probably half a dozen credible witnesses reported this to me. Another story is that one of the episodes, Pam Church was the lady that's reporting this. They were at a cemetery, and her daughter one of her daughters is autistic. And she was talking about the 2 little girls that she was seeing. And Pam, of course, didn't see the 2 little girls. But she said, yeah, these 2 little girls, and they're hurt, they're bloody. And Pam, by this time, it was used to the daughter having these experiences. She said, well, make sure you tell them that they can't come home with us. So she was afraid they'd follow her home. After they did some research, some of the names where they were standing on these tombstones, that two girls had died in a fire, and that's where they were buried. They found the graves, and it was in that general area. Well, I mean, sometimes. Now, Pam had a wealth of paranormal experiences. Unfortunately, she's no longer with us. She passed away from cancer. But if you listen to that episode, she has, like I said, a wealth of stories and direct experience with some creatures, some entities rather, that she actually believed were demons, which kind of lends itself to the thought that it isn't always a place that's haunted. Sometimes it's people that are haunted.
Have you ever gotten any really good crypto stories from Kentucky? And the reason I ask is, or UFO stories, I found out, what was it, 2-3 weeks ago, that in Kentucky, a train hit a goddamn UFO. I mean...
Yeah, I've heard the same thing. You know, when I was speaking to everyone at Scarefest, I said, you know, everyone thinks, the people that choose not to believe in things like this, they think, oh, we would know. We have eyes everywhere. We have drones that are blanketing the planet, so we would know. But see, that's really not the case. For one thing, very simple thing, foliage would block a lot. You go out into the woods, where I grew up, you could walk 5 to 10 minutes up on the hill and be so far back that you thought you were the only person on the planet. It's hard to tell what's back there. It wouldn't surprise me if there were UFOs. We're probably about 3 miles from where I live. There's a gas plant. And over the course of the last 60 years, there's been numerous people report lights by this gas plant, strange lights that can't be explained by normal aircraft and things like that. It might be interesting to note as well that this gas plant goes next to a creek, and aliens are reported to, UFOs rather, we won't even say aliens, have been reported to follow things like power production plants and rivers. So yeah, it's totally believable. You have to have an open enough mind to consider the fact that there may be other creatures out there.
That and just like, oh, we blanket the planet in drones and shit. I'm going to tell you, first of all, except for along the road where it's a fresh kill, yes. People say, why haven't we found Bigfoot remains? I have never seen a deer carcass that wasn't killed by a hunter and left, you know, like in my gate or something. I've never just walked through the woods, but I watched this week, I binge watched, which is only 2 or 3 episodes, The Texas Killing Fields. It's on Netflix, everybody. They found 4 bodies within 50 foot of each other. One at a damn time. And they could not solve this case. Every time somebody would go missing, I don't know where to look. And they were in a place that is same size as my yard and maybe my side lot. So I absolutely refuse to go in to buy the story that we would know, because.
Well, the example I use is, take a living room or a kitchen and put a Roomba in it. In order to cover that room, it goes in a grid pattern. It slowly covers the entire room. Imagine the room was 30 million acres. It really isn't possible, especially when you have creatures that can pass you within 20 feet. Like I said before, the example I used, standing on my front porch. We are blind, deaf, and stupid compared to the garden variety field mouse.
Yeah.
We think we know everything because we want to think we know everything. And it really just isn't the case. We learn a little bit, say, oh, we know everything, and we shove everything to the side. Just in where I live out there, and I've used this example before too. My house is built like a rectangle. If something was in my house, we're in my house, and I walked through the front door, I could literally pass them if they were quiet enough, and I would never know they were there. They could be right at the front door and gone. you can't see everything all at one time. That's the biggest problem with it. And then vagaries of technology and things like I said, foliage, and considering that every animal, every wild animal, their survival is based mostly on their ability to blend in and hide. But man who thinks he is the apex predator, who thinks he's the most intelligent thing on the planet, decides that, oh, there's nothing out there. And I just think that's naive.
I've been watching also on Netflix, Ancient Apocalypse, and it's about, and the guy, what it is, this guy, and he doesn't make a lot of statement of fact. He just tries to get you thinking, but it's basically goes around all these ancient mega structures and everything. Which incidentally, Claire talking about not wanting to go Bigfoot hunting because it was too much walking. I'm there with you. And that's why I like watching this show. These are places I will never go, because when I see a pyramid, I see steps. So I'm out. But I actually was watching another podcast tonight, and they were talking about, this is like one of the most popular shows on Netflix, but it's also the one that they're getting the most grief over, because they're claiming this guy is he's a heretic. And all he's saying is, maybe civilization's a little older than we've been writing it down for.
Well, and that's true. But I think that is plausible, because we didn't start writing down history until maybe the last couple thousand years, really.
I would argue, us as we humans, like we see them now, I would say 4,000, because that takes you back to Mesopotamia, the early Egyptians. And they weren't writing it, but they were carving shit on walls and doing graffiti.
Yes, exactly. But before then, everything was oral storytelling. Mm-hmm. And even though these oral storytellers did their best, you know how a story grows with the telling. Oh, yeah. And I was thinking about this the other day. Monster movies are very popular around my house. That's one of the reasons I like Scarefest so much, because I get to meet people that have been in these horror movies. As time goes on, maybe at some point, people had encountered something that could have been like a werewolf. Maybe it wasn't something that shape changed. Maybe it was just an intelligent species. Very violent, of course, because all the stories are getting torn apart. So you see this thing at night and get scared. Of course, it's going to be 15 feet tall, because you're scared and you're going to try to run at least. Maybe it's more like 6 feet tall. Maybe it's more like human size, or even a little smaller. Because something comes charging at you out of the woods, growling and snarling, they instantly look bigger. And maybe over time, this changed with the telling. Maybe we're not getting a clear picture. It's like the ancient indigenous people of North America. They used to refer to things, everything was the people. You had badger people, wolf people, coyote people, and people. Okay. So it was more malleable. Maybe they were onto something that we no longer refuse to acknowledge, rather. We refuse to believe. We're talking about thousands of years of history, and they accepted this as fact. We, of course, the settlers come in, the colonists from North America, and instantly assumed that these people were ignorant savages. They survived for thousands of years with the benefit of English settlers.
And I watched the documentary.
I
watched the documentary about how during the Revolutionary War, they almost kicked our ass.
Exactly. Well, and I watched maybe even the same documentary. If there hadn't been a giant plague before the Pilgrims landed in the New World, they'd have just pushed us back out to sea, because we'd have been outnumbered like 10-1. But that's how history does strange things to us. the winners write history.
Oh yeah.
And so they color things to suit themselves, and some things it's okay for them to leave out. People don't understand. Data is pure. Knowledge is always suspect because it's always processed through the way we see things. And I've said it before, I'll say it again. The only pure thing as far as static is basic mathematics. 2 equal parts plus 2 equal parts will always equal 4 parts. But everything else is a little suspect. So maybe ghosts do leave cold spots on your floor. Maybe the Wendigo does haunt the frozen vastnesses and devour anybody unfortunate enough to run into them. And maybe there are aliens in spaceships landing at that gas plant 3 miles from my house. You have to acknowledge the possibilities. You mentioned the ghost hunters earlier. I was talking to Jason Hawes the first time I was lucky enough to interview him. I said, first, you're really popular around my house because you try to find what's there and just see. You go at it from a scientific standpoint. You're not going in to prove this place is haunted or it's not haunted. I said, and if I were to, describe myself, it would be an open-minded skeptic. He said, well, you have to be that way. Not every time do you go into something, you find something. You just have to be able to find what's there.
Let's get your plug in now for the end of the episode. Now, I do want to give you some professional advice.
Okay.
When you want to hear ghost stories, and let them come on anonymously. Nurses have the best ghost stories. Hospitals are haunted as fuck, dude.
Absolutely.
And I'll put it this way, I have yet to meet a nurse, I think, that works in a hospital that doesn't believe in ghosts.
Well, it comes back to, if you think if ghosts are just energy, then think about how much passionate energy, grief and joy and everything in between that goes through the walls of a hospital.
Don't get me started. We'll be here all day.
The best time in my life was when I was at the hospital the day my daughter was born. There's nothing that's going to compare to that. So maybe a little bit of my joy soaked into the walls of St. Mary's Hospital. I don't know. I've also watched several people die at the hospital, and maybe some of my grief soaked into the wall. Maybe you're seeing this playback when you see a ghost in the hospital, and it actually has nothing to do with Charlie. Maybe it's just an imprint, like playing back a tape recorder.
Now you're just trying. You're just trying to get me to argue with you now. Anyway, tell them how to find your podcast.
Well, you can find it anywhere you listen to podcasts. It's Shadows of Legend. You have to, if you're searching for it, you have to type in Shadows of Legend, the podcast, or it brings you up to a video game. A video game, I'm assuming, is a very nice video game, but it's not me. You have to type in the podcast thing. Or you could go to charlieromans.com or shadowsoflegend.com. And you can send me an email if you'd be interested in being on the show, or just let me know what you think.
There's your invite, people. Thank you, Charles, for coming on. Thank you, Claire, for putting up with me tonight and coming on also very, very short notice. Everybody will be back. Theoretically, we'll be back next week if I can get the tree shook and keep everybody out of the hospital. We'll see you then.
Well, given all the conversation we had at the hotel, I'm long-winded. Call me if you need anything.